In the dark heart of the European underworld, where loyalties are bought with blood and fear is the common currency, a figure shrouded in mystery and power emerged. His name, whispered in the shadows, was Franc Gergely, also known as Franc Topia. He was not merely a man, but a chilling legend, a ghost born in the tumultuous city of Elbasan, Albania. He commanded an invisible empire, a crime syndicate whose reach seemed limitless and whose name inspired reverential terror. For years, he was the most wanted man, an orchestrator of murders, an architect of violence operating from the opulence of a golden exile in Dubai. This is the story of how the untouchable Franc Gergely became a prisoner. To understand Franc Gergely's ascent, we must travel to Elbasan, his hometown, and to the Albania of the early 1990s. After the fall of communism, the nation plunged into a whirlwind of severe political and economic instability. Institutions collapsed, government control vanished, and poverty spread like a plague, creating a fertile vacuum for organized crime. Albania became a crucible of desperation and anarchy. The breaking point came in 1997 with the outbreak of civil unrest, a national conflagration sparked by the collapse of massive pyramid schemes that defrauded thousands of citizens. Violence engulfed the country, more than 2,000 people lost their lives and state armories were looted, flooding the streets with weapons. In this breeding ground of chaos and anomie, where the law was a suggestion and survival a daily struggle, a new generation of ambitious and ruthless men emerged. Franc Gergely was one of them. Like many young men from Elbasan, his first steps into the underworld were in petty crimes, but his ambition was voracious, and his nose for business, even illegal business, saw him rise quickly through the ranks of the local underworld. The social collapse not only created criminals, it forged a particular type of underworld leader, hardened, opportunistic, and deeply cynical about any form of authority. The environment of a paradise for illegal trade, where even politicians were buyable, shaped his worldview and fueled his audacity, sowing the seeds of belief in his own invulnerability. From the shattered streets of Elbasan, Franc Topia, a young man barely out of his teens, began to forge his legend. He was no longer a simple street thug. His name began to resonate with a mixture of fear and respect. He aspired to direct large-scale criminal operations, and this ambition led him to consolidate power and form the Topia clan, an organization that would soon become synonymous with terror and criminal efficiency. Under his leadership, the clan expanded with astonishing speed and brutality, specializing in drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and money laundering. They quickly positioned themselves as a major player on the Albanian criminal scene, notorious for their brutal methods and international connections. The Albanian mafia, with its traditional hierarchical structure based on family clans known as fis, and a strict code of loyalty, or besa, offered a model of almost impenetrable secrecy and internal discipline, often reinforced by blood ties. Gergely knew how to capitalize on these characteristics, using clan cohesion as a platform for unprecedented international expansion. The Topia clan's operations transcended Albania's borders, spreading throughout Europe to become a global entity. Their main source of income came from large-scale cocaine trafficking, importing massive quantities from South America, and controlling the logistics chain through major European ports like Antwerp and Rotterdam. The drugs were processed in clandestine laboratories scattered across the continent and then distributed, generating colossal profits that were repatriated to Albania to finance further criminal activities and corrupt wills. Furthermore, the clan was deeply involved in arms trafficking, supplying weaponry to other criminal organizations, demonstrating a strategic vision that went beyond simple opportunism. Gergely didn't just build a gang, he erected a multinational, diversified, and vertically integrated criminal corporation, a machine of terror and profit that operated with chilling efficiency. His youth, barely 31 at the time of his extradition, contrasted with the magnitude of the empire he had built, a testament to his exceptional, albeit perverse, leadership ability. With his power consolidated in Albania and his network extending across Europe, Franc Gergely took a strategic step that would define his reign. He moved his center of operations to Dubai, in the heart of the United Arab Emirates. Amidst luxury, skyscrapers and dazzling opulence, he settled into a $1 million villa in Dubai Hills, images of which were even published by a local construction company, a detail that underscores his audacity. Dubai was not just a golden refuge, it was a global platform. The move to Dubai allowed Franc to expand his operations on a global scale. From his new base, he orchestrated a vast network of international drug trafficking and organized crime. From this sanctuary of wealth, Gergely directed his empire with calculated distance. He maintained a low profile in Dubai and rarely got his hands dirty himself. Instead, he directed his operations from the shadows using coded messages and trusted soldiers to manage day-to-day affairs. This life of luxury and apparent impunity allowed him to feel untouchable, mingling with Dubai's high society, while in parallel, managing one of Europe's most feared criminal organizations. His choice of Dubai reflected a growing trend among major crime bosses, using tax havens and global wealth centers as bases of operations, seeking to isolate themselves from the pressure of European law enforcement. It was a calculated business decision aimed at optimizing the management of his criminal empire and his personal security. However, this very ostentation and the concentration of high-profile criminal figures in places like Dubai began to generate international pressure that ironically would contribute to closing the legal loopholes he himself had exploited. The hegemony of the Kopcha clan, under the relentless command of Franc Gergely, soon clashed with other emerging powers. The bloodiest rivalry erupted with the Alibej clan, led by Ardit Spahiu, an equally ruthless figure determined to maintain his dominance in the lucrative drug trafficking business. The spark that ignited the war was, according to reports, a massive shipment of cocaine that disappeared in Great Britain, a loss for which both clans blamed each other. What followed was an unprecedented spiral of violence, a personal vendetta that transcended Albanian borders and stained the streets of Europe with blood, especially Brussels, which became the new battlefield. The climax of this war came on November 27, 2020 in Molenbeek, Belgium. Ardit Spahiu, 38, was brutally murdered. As he left a cafe, 3 masked hitmen ambushed him and shot him mercilessly. Spahiu was hit by 18 bullets, 8 of them fatal. Even as he lay dying, one of the attackers shot him 7 more times at point-blank range. Belgian authorities suspect Gergely ordered this assassination from the distance of Dubai. The victim was no stranger to the police. Spahiu was active in drug trafficking, owned a cocaine laboratory, and his phone was tapped as part of a large-scale drug trafficking investigation involving 124 suspects in a mega-trial in Brussels. Furthermore, Spahiu was the brother-in-law of Erion Alibedi, a staunch enemy of the Chopia brothers, which added a layer of personal revenge to the brutal murder. This was not an isolated act. Franc Chopia is credited with at least 9 contract killings, 6 of them perpetrated in Albania, consolidating his reputation as a bloodthirsty leader. Investigations by SPAC, Albania's special anti-corruption and organized crime structure, linked the Chopia brothers to orders for up to 14 executions. For Gergely, the execution of Ardit Spahiu was an unequivocal message, a demonstration of his absolute power and a warning that anyone who crossed his path or that of his clan would meet a swift and fatal end. However, this act of domination, by eliminating such an important and already monitored player as Spahiu, attracted even more intense police attention to the Albanian mafia networks in Belgium, ironically accelerating the investigation that would lead to Gergely's own downfall. For years, Franc Gergely and his clan, like countless criminal organizations worldwide, relied on a technological tool they considered their greatest ally, Sky ECC. It was an encrypted messaging service touted for its supposedly impregnable security, which became the preferred channel for coordinating illicit operations, from drug trafficking to ordering assassinations. Criminals believed their communications were impenetrable, a digital sanctuary for their darkest secrets. But the digital fortress had a crack. European police authorities, in a massive and sophisticated intelligence operation, managed to compromise the Sky ECC network. What followed was a veritable goldmine for investigators. The key to solving this case was Sky. The decrypted messages revealed the extent of Franc Gergely's involvement in these murders, including chilling evidence such as photos and videos of torture and executions committed by the Gergely clan. Investigators obtained evidence of Gergely's involvement in the Molenbeek events from intercepted Sky ECC communications. These messages provided authorities with a roadmap of the group's activities, exposing the inner workings of their criminal empire. Armed with this unprecedented intelligence, Belgian law enforcement launched a massive coordinated operation in October 2021. Some 100 police officers participated in raids that dismantled 11 cocaine laboratories and 5 cannabis plantations, seizing over 32 tons of cocaine, as well as villas, luxury cars, and apartments valued at over €7 million. Numerous members of the network were arrested, leading to the largest criminal trial in Belgian history, with 142 suspects in the dock. The fall of Sky ECC was not just a blow to Gergely, it was an earthquake that shook the foundations of organized crime globally, demonstrating that even the most advanced technology can become the Achilles heel of criminal empires. The arrogance of believing themselves untouchable in cyberspace led many, including Gergely, to document their own crimes, inadvertently handing over the keys to their downfall. With the treasure trove of evidence obtained through Sky ECC, the net began to close on Franc Gergely, even in his luxurious Dubai hideout. On June 16, 2023, the Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office formally requested his arrest and extradition from the United Arab Emirates. Although some sources indicate his arrest in Dubai may have occurred in late 2022, the decisive moment of his fall materialized with his extradition. On December 29, 2023, UAE authorities extradited Gergely Franc, an Albanian national accused of premeditated murder, to the relevant authorities in Belgium. The extradition had been approved by the UAE Minister of Justice on December 13, 2023. This move was made possible by the extradition agreement signed between the United Arab Emirates and the Kingdom of Belgium in December 2021, which came into force in November 2022. Significantly, Gergely was the first drug criminal extradited since the extradition treaty came into force, a fact that made him a symbol of the new era of international judicial cooperation. The extradition of this high-value target was a clear signal that former safe havens for criminals were becoming increasingly inhospitable. These proceedings confirm the UAE's continued collaboration with international partners in the pursuit of international justice. Even his last journey as a free man had a cinematic quality. He was extradited on a private plane after a commercial airline refused to transport him the previous day. The once untouchable kingpin who directed his empire from the shadows of Dubai was finally on his way to face justice. Franc Gergely's journey from his opulent villa in Dubai culminated in a cold cell in a Belgian prison. Stripped of his luxury, his power, and his aura of invulnerability, the ghost of Elbasan transformed into a defendant. The man who once felt untouchable, who allegedly ordered executions with a call or a coded message, now had to submit to due process of law, a stark contrast to the summary justice he himself would have dispensed. The main charge against him is premeditated murder for the death of Ardit Spayu in Molenbeek. Belgian authorities consider him the orchestrator of the murder, the mastermind behind the execution. His trial will not be an isolated case but is part of a much broader context, a large-scale offensive against Albanian mafia networks and cocaine trafficking in Europe. In fact, a mega trial with 124 suspects, all linked to the criminal activities of Ardit Spayu and his entourage, was already underway in Brussels when Gergely was extradited. Gergely's appearance before Belgian justice represents a crucial and high-profile chapter in this saga. For the authorities, bringing one of the leading figures of the Albanian cocaine mafia in Europe to trial is a fundamental step. The outcome of his trial will be closely watched, not only by law enforcement, but also by the criminal organizations themselves, aware of the message a conviction could send. The capture and extradition of Franc Gergely undoubtedly represent a significant victory for international justice. His personal empire, built on foundations of violence and drug trafficking, has collapsed. However, the fall of a kingpin, however powerful, rarely means the end of the organization he represents. The Albanian mafia, with its deep roots and resilient structure, remains a formidable force on the global criminal landscape. Characterized by an amalgam of diversified criminal enterprises, a high criminal capacity, and an often decentralized structure where clans operate transnationally, it has demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt and persist. Its reputation for brutality, fierce internal loyalty, and its ability to infiltrate legal and political institutions, along with proven efficiency in drug trafficking, keep it a key player in the global underworld, with a consolidated presence in Europe, South America, North America, and Asia, and with deep connections in countries like Belgium. Europol warns that drug trafficking networks, such as those operated by Albanian clans, destabilize society, undermine legal economies, and trust in institutions. This is a rapidly growing threat, with criminals becoming increasingly sophisticated and dangerous. Organized crime in general is evolving, becoming more destabilizing, fueled by the online environment and accelerated by new technologies like artificial intelligence. Franc Gergely's story is a case study in modern transnational crime. He used the technology of his time, like SQUI, ECC, and global systems, to his advantage. Future crime lords will undoubtedly exploit even more advanced tools. The fight against these organizations demands constant adaptation, strong international cooperation, and technological superiority on the part of law enforcement. The Gergely case, though a success, is a stark reminder that the battle against organized crime is ongoing, evolutionary, and vitally important for the security and stability of societies worldwide.